My name's Joe Mathis. I came to Alaska on June 10th, 1975 to work in the oil industry on North Slope during the pipeline days, and it's been here ever since. Well, I was working as a wine supervisor for a liquor company in Florida, and they didn't pay very much money. It was very low wages, and I was wanting to get married, and the woman that I asked to marry me said that I couldn't afford to get married. So my father, who has been working in Alaska since the 60s, persuaded me to come up, and he got me a job to working for Universal Services on the pipeline, and I was going up there to do be a payroll clerk and show movies on 16 millimeter movies and run the post office and the commissary and that sort of thing. And then I became a relief camp manager on the pipeline when they were at the different camps. I was at Pump Station 1 initially, and then I moved to Pump 4, and then from Pump 4 to Tulik and Galbraith Lake, and then later at Franklin Bluffs. I had no idea. Coming from Florida to Fairbanks in June, where it was almost daylight, 20 hours a day, and the bars didn't close except for about an hour to muck them out and clean up the floors a little bit and reopen. And so it was a wild and crazy time in Fairbanks, and we went through the initiation for Alaska and getting our gear and parkas and bunny boots and that sort of thing before we headed up to the North Slope, and I landed there in Dead Horse and went over to Pump Station 1, which was just a bunch of ADCO units and buildings, and they were building that pump station when I started. Well, I was working 13 weeks on and 3 weeks off. So those were, and we were working basically 10, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it was, but I was single at the time, and so it was, all your meals were included. The only thing you had to buy, and when I was a smoker, was your cigarettes or your snuff or whatever chew that you had. So there was really no expense, and so for me it was just mail the money to the bank. I joined the Alaska USA Federal Credit Union in '75, and I still have a 5-digit account number at Alaska USA, or it's now global, but it was just the money went to the bank, and I didn't have anything needs except for buying some toiletries and that sort of thing. Oh yeah, Florida. I was making about $120, $125 a week, which is $600 a month, and came up here, and the starting salary up here was $3,000 a month if you worked all month. So you had to work every day. Basically, you were on a day rate, so you only got paid when you were up there. So one time I spent 6 months at Franklin Bluffs without coming out or without an R&R. It was good money, and it was an adventure. Everybody up here was in there. It was a kind of a young group of people in Alaska. We were all in our mid-20s or early 30s, and it was really, people were entrepreneurs. There was a lot of excitement. There was 20,000 people on that pipeline, and Fairbanks was just booming. There was just all kinds of stuff going on. There was women, gambling, drugs, whatever. There was Fairbanks was quite the town. You could see just about anything you wanted to right on the street. There would be on 2 Street in Fairbanks, which has been cleaned up a lot now, but 2 Street was just a wild place. You would see anything from oral sex to whatever right on the street corners, and it didn't get dark, so lot of it is just kind of out in the daylight. So there was very little law enforcement that I ever saw. Well, there was a state trooper. We called him Iron Hand Bob. He had a metal hand, and he was quite the guy. He had this silver hand with the clamps. Yeah, he's a tough guy. But anyway, there was just lots of things going on, especially on the pipeline itself. When I was there at Franklin, I had like 80 housekeepers, and most of my housekeepers were women, and so those housekeepers made a lot of money, not only with during the day, but they also made a lot of money during the night. Had one instance where I had one housekeeper that kind of got strung out on some drugs, and we finally found her because we had 1,500 people, and in that, it's like a small town. You had a chapel, you had 2 kitchens, you had movie theaters, you had rec rooms, and all this kind of stuff, and they could just get lost in the among those 1,500 people and all those units. And this one young lady, we sent her out, and but she went off and forgot her purse at the security before she got on the plane, and went to Fairbanks. So we went through and opened up her purse and with security and everything else, and she had about $12,000 in her purse, mostly $100 bills, but there were just lots of $100 checks in there, and for services rendered. Anyway, so it was quite a deal. So it was interesting that she was going to sue me for wrongful discharge, and we reminded her that we had all these checks and stuff, and that the IRS might be interested in knowing where all this other income came from. So and she was with Local 878, the Culinary Union, and the union dropped the wrongful discharge. 60 miles south of Prudhoe. It was between, it was just south of Pump 3, and it was a pipeline camp, and really a neat camp too. We're right by the pipeline. Construction was going on, and you had 798ers, and you had Teamsters. You had lots of people. There was everything in the world that you could think of. There would be these 798ers that had worked in family groups, and they had a rumble between the families, and one guy got stabbed in the showers and stuff, but he didn't say a word about who it was or where it was. He just got medevaced out, and nothing happened. Yes, I went from being doing payroll and showing movies and stuff to being the camp manager for the camps, and so had quite a few employees. We had about 130 employees, so 40 in the kitchen and about 80 in the housekeeping. Well, there was the Culinary Union did all for the food service, housekeeping, janitorial. We dealt with the Culinary Union, and then for all the construction, there was the 798ers out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the Teamsters. So you were either in the laborers union, AFL-CIO, or was mostly the construction trades that were the union people, and they carried a lot of weight. They could slow down the work, they could wobble, they could do lots of things. So you really needed to cater to the needs of the workers, and we were making, when you had 1,500 people and you need 2 or 3 sandwiches per person per day, we were making 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 sandwiches a day. They have a spike room, 24-hour spike room, where they just go in and there's a paper bag, and you fill up your bag with whatever, candy bars, sandwiches, whatever they took out for their lunches. And then they come in, and then you would serve breakfast and lunch both morning and night in the kitchens, because there was two-shift operations where they were working 12-hour shifts. So you'd have some people who would be coming in and work during the days, and then others would come in and work nights. So you were having to do it. And then sometimes you had what we call hot sheeting, where we ran out of beds, and somebody would come in and they would sleep in the bed and everything else, and then they'd get up and go to work, and we'd change out the sheets and put fresh sheets on for the person, and we'd have to do that every day. It's called hot sheeting. And so it's kind of an exciting time. In the 70s, like 75, 76, 77, 78, when I was there on the pipeline, we there was no technology like we have today. Matter of fact, we didn't even know, at Franklin, we weren't sure who was president of the United States, because we didn't have the news, you didn't have radio up there, you didn't have satellites, and we get the newspapers would be flown in. We would watch football games that would be taped and sent up to us, and we would be watching them a week late, watch the previous week's football game. So it was technology, and you probably don't even know what a telex machine is, but we would have this machine that was, you type out these little tapes, and it would, it's called a telex, and then you feed this tape into the thing, and it would send it through the telephone lines to for your food orders. And so the logistics on the pipeline were something else. It's where you would have all these trucks come in and you offload every week, and you had refrigerated ones to keep them warm, because it might be 40, 50 below zero, and so you'd have to offload stuff in sub-zero temperatures. It was a challenge, but it was fun. No, there was just lots of energy and a lot of positive things going on, and people were anxious to do things. And so we just, in that little city there of 1,500 people that would be transient, move in, move out, that you had your own water treatment plant, you had your own sewer treatment plant, we had a chaplain, you have your security forces, you had the radio room was the central place, because he would be talking and he would have the latest news. So people would try to get to the radio room, talk to the radio person. But there were no cell phones, there were no computers. It was all manual spreadsheets that you would do just by pen and paper. So. Well, it was interesting. When I worked on those camps and everything, and that came to an end. Jobs, everybody got laid off. I went to Bill Webb, who was the head of Botel at the time, and I asked Bill, I said, "Can you get me a job somewhere?" And he said, "Joe," he said, I can't. The only thing I can do is I can put you out on a rig." He says, "There's a Parker rig in the Beaufort Sea that's drilling Parker 147. He says you can go out there as a bull cook, which is making beds and fixing salads and stuff." So I went out for about 4 months as a bull cook, shaking the farts out of beds and stuff for these tool pushers and stuff. So, but I decided after 4 months, I went back to see Bill, and I said, I appreciate it was good work, good money, and people interesting on the rig, but I said, this is not what I'm cut out to do. I just really don't want to be a housekeeper and a kitchen helper. So I ended up becoming the personnel manager and working on the slope, doing out on the rigs and stuff, and did that for a while, and then worked on the slope for the next 20 years until then we moved, took a job in Anchorage, and Well, I worked for Universal Services and worked for them, and then Nana hired me to run Nana Oilfield Services and Arctic Utilities, and so I was running the electric utility at Dead Horse and their oilfield services, and then we did tourism. We bought a camp called the South Lake Inn and converted it into a tourist camp, and we had Princess and Holland America had bus tours that would come up the Hall Road, and they would land there, and people would fly in, get in, spend the night, get on the bus and go south, and other people would get on the bus in Fairbanks and come north. And so we were the turnaround point for tourism at Dead Horse at the time. No, my intent was just to come up and be a carpetbagger, as we call it in the South, come up and make some money and go back to Florida and get married and have a house on the lake in Florida, but that wasn't in the cards. I fell in love with Alaska. This was an exciting place to be, especially when by that time I was about 28, 29 years old, and so there was so much going on in Alaska, and it was so interesting that even though Alaska is such a big state geographically, it's a really small state in terms of people. You could get to know your legislator, you could get to know the governor, got to know on first name basis people like Ted Stevens, Don Young, a lot of the, and your governor. You would be invited to fundraisers or to events, and you would be talking with all kinds of people from all walks of life, whether it be Wally Hickle or Egan. All those folks were on the street, and downtown Anchorage was a really vibrant place. There was just, the Captain Cook Hotel and the Sheraton and the Hilton. So it was this was a great place for people to take care of opportunities. And there were lots of entrepreneurs, and lots of those people started small businesses, started oil field service type businesses. And so it was just exciting. There was just so much energy, and it was young. People were in their 30s or late 20s, and it was a young person's place. Oh, people don't realize that, there used to be a bumper sticker that says, oil feeds my family and pays my taxes. And and that is so true then, and it is true today. We wouldn't have the Performing Arts Center, the Egan Center. We wouldn't have the schools, all the schools that we have in the state, all the other things that are infrastructure. It's hard to believe that this state would exist or even be able to pay for itself if it hadn't been for the oil industry. I mean, we've got a saving account of almost $80 billion, and that's oil dollars, and it's significant, and it's changed people's lives. It changed my life. There's things that are unintended consequences. If the pipeline hadn't been built, I wouldn't be here, and lots of other people wouldn't be here. All the people that worked on that pipeline stayed, and it's always remarkable that you have oil company presidents that have stayed up here they could go anywhere in the world. They've been all over the world, whether it's Arco, BP, Exxon. All the other oil companies have executives that still have homes in Alaska, and they could choose to be anywhere. But they fell in love with it. They stay with it. And our military is the same way. You have lots of people who retire out of the military that really love the state and love the people. And Today, it's transformed. It's not the same. It's not the same place that it was in the 70s and 80s when things were really going. It's matured in some ways, and it's not matured in a good way. I'm not sure that we're better off now than we were then. I moved from Fairbanks down to Anchorage, and was working here. And there was a call by the industry that they contacted. I was with Universal Services then, and they contacted the catering contractors and the drilling contractors, and they said, we're going to be holding a lease sale, the Beaufort Sea lease sale, and we're going to be holding some hearings. And we were hoping that that the support industry and service industry would come and give testimony before this. It was either a House or Senate hearing on the lease sale, and we said we would. And so we put together a group of contractors, and with the help of people like Dave Harbor, who was working at that time with ARCO, and they were asking us to pull together testimony. So, and would we bring some of our employees? And so we had people like Snow White Quality Cleaners, Bill Woodland and his group, and we had people who had laundromats, food service providers, drilling contractors, and we packed that room with people to give testimony on the Beaufort Sea lease sale. And the industry was very, very appreciative of that, because the uniqueness is that there's, I think, about 7 or 8 service people for every true oil person. So we have about, right now, like 25,000 people who are involved in the service industry for the oil industry, but there's only like 1,500 people really directly and paid by the oil companies. So we brought some clout and some credibility that when you're punishing or helping the oil industry, you're also helping all these people who are behind the scenes helping the industry. And so from that testimony and that group, we had a core group of people that really we believed that we ought to form an association that would help the industry and help the public and the public understanding and the government that there is how you treat the core industry that we have for the state, the oil, affects all the others. And we were meeting down here at the cattle company in the bar there, and about once a week we would meet down there. And so on the back of a napkin, we ended up calling it the Alaska Support Industry Alliance. And that was the formation. We started with about 8 board members, and we only had about, 15 or 20 members. And now there's over, I think, 400 members in that thing. And we just celebrated, I think, our 48th, it was on November 9th, 1979, that we had our first organizational meeting of the Alliance. And that's how the Alliance got started, was out of that lease sale testimony. We formed this group of people to support the industry. And we definitely created bylaws, because one thing that we did not want is that we wanted credibility when we give testimony or say that we're advocates for the service industry, the support industry, that we're not a bought and paid for by the oil companies. And there's been many times in the past that we really pissed off the oil companies because of our position. And one time I remember that the president of BP was just livid when Governor Sheffield canceled the leases in Bristol Bay. We had a cartoonist working for us, and we did a cartoon showing an ostrich with Bill Sheffield's head sticking down in the sand and everything, and it was put in the paper. And anyway, George Nelson just was livid. I mean, and he called everybody, my boss and all this stuff, and they wanted us to retract that, and the alliance stood its ground. And at that time, Bill Webb was the executive director of the alliance. But we really took on some issues, and it seems that like true to fashion, it was a good thing that we do not allow any members of our board to be employed by the oil producers or the oil companies. Matter of fact, we just had one director at the Alliance was hired by Alyeska, and she had to step down off the board. And so we had a really strong group of people who believed in Alaska and Alaska's resources, and that we need to figure out a way, and it's still what was going on in 1979 is still going on today, is that why is there an adversarial relationship between the industry and government, and that we need to figure out how we can better combat that adversarial relationship. Well, and that's the part of what we say is that, the oil industry is essential, and contrary to, I think, some of the belief that we can wean ourselves off of oil, I think it's a ways down the road for us to think about that. But it would be devastating for this state to get out of the oil industry. I don't know of any industry in the state that would supplant the oil industry. And unless you were saying, let's tax fish. We don't, most of the fishing industry goes outside. They're from Oregon or Washington State or California, and they come up, and while they don't really contribute anything to our state coffers like the oil industry does. And mining is one that doesn't contribute as much, although we need mining and we need all those rare earth minerals, and we support that. But really, our bread and butter in this state is still oil, and the service industry, the alliance, needs to keep out in front. And it's interesting that the producers and the oil industry sometimes forget how important we are, except when a ballot measure comes up and they're threatened with onerous taxation or changes in the tax rules. They come to the industry that actually does the work and say, help us defeat that measure or help us with our issue. And that's because we have so many households and so many people that are affected by this, and it's a fine line here between it's a symbiotic relationship between the oil service industry and the oil companies. Well, and I think it's because oil doesn't have a lot of credibility in terms of if an oil company puts out a message or whatever, it's not as credible as if the blue collar people that in the service industry or the other service companies that are doing all that business. I think we have more credibility, and people would have more faith in listening to our arguments about what's good for the oil industry is also good for the service industry. And so that's one of the reasons why we don't allow the producers to become members of our board or become a member of the organization. We try to remain as with an arm's length with the industry in most cases, and that's worked quite well, other than sometimes when we do run counter to the industry. And one of the issues that was very strong about our thing is we want a local hire and local contractors, and we're constantly pushing on the producers and the oil industry that they need to hire Alaskans. And to us, that's a very, very important issue. Although right now, since the pandemic, and that there seems to be, getting people just to go to work, it's not such much an industry issue now, because you can't find people, even we can't find people in our own service industry to work on drilling rigs or work in the laundries or in the food service industry. Restaurants can't find people. So local hire has kind of dwindled as a issue. But back then, and as much as 10 years ago, local and contractor hire is a very important issue, and it was one that we had difficulty. The support industry is here all the time, and the producers and the oil companies, they rotate their staffs in and out. They come in up at a 3-year assignment or a 4-year assignment. Your presidents of the oil industry or whatever, or the senior people, they're not here year in, year out for decades. The service industry is here. This is their home. And while there are a lot of oil company people that do stay here and live, work their career here, but the people that run those companies, they get transferred in and out. So the continuity that we have with our experience with the legislature, with the state government, is consistent, and we are here totally. And so to me, that is a plus for the oil industry, is to have the alliance doing their messaging or helping messaging what's important for Alaska. There is a line that crosses, and I guess what we try to do is bridge understanding the needs of the state. The state needs the income, they need the revenue, and the oil industry, they want to produce oil, and we want to be a part of that. And so hopefully we can mitigate, or help bridge that gap of communication between state government and the oil industry and the environmental community. And so it's important that people understand the relationship that is so dependent upon this cooperation. And it's when you've got a breakdown of the communication and the understanding and the education of what really drives our state government, and it's the revenues that we come. And we need to be focused on putting more oil in the pipeline rather than focused on trying to how to restrict it. And so that's to me, our messaging is that we need jobs, and we need to be a part of the solution, not part of the problem. Well, the technology is the biggest change. In the 70s, and when the pipeline was being built, there was no satellites. The communication is instantaneous, and I think the industry is progressed so much better. This is the cleanest oil field in the world, and that's lost on a lot of people, that they don't understand how well and how good that we can do things. They can have a drill rig right here and drill 6 or 7 miles out towards the airport and come up and produce an oil well without putting a footprint on it. And so the footprint of the oil industry is diminished so much that it's the big difference between then and today is technology, and the amount of innovation that it comes from the technology that we have for producing oil, and it can be done cleaner, better, safer. And we had lessons learned from the Exxon Valdez, and I remember a time when the Russians came over after Russia opened up, and they brought the Russians over here, and they would go up to Prudhoe, and they would see the oil in here, and then they would go down to Valdez, and then the one Russian was asking, you had 2 million barrels coming through up here, how much comes out down here? And it was beyond the scope of their thinking that the same amount of oil that went in is coming out, And because in Russia, they have people who are stealing oil, or they got leaks, and so the same amount of oil doesn't come out that goes in. It's that would be amazing for us. So anyway, so that's to me, that's the difference between what's going on today is that we're much better at what we're doing, and the industry is doing much better. But that's an education process, though, is because the negativity that people have about thinking about oil and fossil fuels, that it's become a dirty word. It's conjures up things like oil spills, and when those were lessons learned, and I think we're better at it. I would say the future is yours. I mean, it's the new technology that's it's not the old stuff. It's the new people that understand the artificial intelligence that will be in the oil industry that's coming on how things are done. It's going to take those new people with different. I mean, I don't have that skill set. I'm old school, and most of the folks that were here in the 70s that were 25, 30 years old, they're now in their 70s. And what we need is this new group of people with new thinking, new innovation. But for Alaska, this is still an opportunity of a lifetime for people to come. And it's still a small state. You can still, one person can make a difference, or one small group of people, like we did with 12 or 15 people that formed this organization 40-something years ago, have had an impact on what happens in the state. And young people coming up here, or we keep the people up here, why would they want to leave? People love this state, and people love the interaction that you can have. Whereas if you go to large cities where you're just part of millions of people, and here we barely have 700,000 people in the state. So to me, it's a future is bright for any young person who wants to come. Well, it's again, things that unintended consequences of being able to come up here and work. I met my wife on the North Slope. If it hadn't been for oil, I would have never met her. I wouldn't be here today if it hadn't been for that. So, there are a series of events in our lifetime, and Spiro Agnew was the tiebreaker to build the pipeline. I mean, what significance did that one vote have on this state? It's unbelievable what this world would look like if we hadn't had that one vote in that time. And if we hadn't had the Alaska Native Settlement Act, and that created this corridor for Alaska. And then the richest companies in this state are the native corporations, and that are benefiting it. And if you look at the North Slope Borough, and you've got a North Slope Borough that has a football team. I mean, and they have different things that are going on in the North Slope and in the villages. It's phenomenal. So, but it wouldn't have happened if it hadn't have been for these certain things that happen, and it built on itself, and people that were working here built on it. I mean, it's an incredible series of events that I don't think it wasn't just happenstance. I think it was meant to be. I don't know if you believe what you believe in, but nothing happens by accident. There's a purpose, and thank God for some of those things that did happen. And you can look at the Exxon Valdez and that oil spill. We were in the doldrums, and the silver lining of that spill is that it pumped $2 billion into the economy, and it took us out of a recession. And as horrible as it was, but look at the safety things that are going on in tankers now, in spill technology. There's something to be gained by all these hardships that we've overcome. So, and young people coming up here, there's going to be more hardships, and there's going to be more technology that needs to happen. So anyway, that's kind of where I see it.